Okay, well let's just say that somebody's decided that they want to start a podcast. They've gotten over the fact that they don't like their voice, and they're ready to get started. Like practically, they really do want to get started. What would be the first 3 to 5 things that they would need to do to just to do that, to actually get started and get to the place where they can put up their first podcast?
Okay, so first of all, as I mentioned, will be to have a predefined audience and a list of specific topics that connect to that audience, like problems you want to address, misconceptions, etc. That's gonna be one thing. The other thing is gonna be actually like a recording space. You need the technical side sorted out. Ideally, you should have a mic. If you don't, you can use your phone. And you should not only pay attention to the microphone, but also to your recording environment. You can have the best microphone ever. Let's spend, I don't know, like $1,000 on it. But if your recording space is echoey or noisy, it's not going to sound well. Um, you should also create on a spreadsheet on Google Docs or in Excel or whatever you use a content calendar. You should make a list of the episodes that you're going to be publishing, okay? The list of topics and the list of dates that will help you plan the whole batch of episodes that you're going to be releasing. That is going to also help you like connect the dots. Like you're going to be able to identify what are like connecting things that make all these apparently separate topics a single core situation. Maybe that will help you understand deeper situations. And you're also going to need two more things. One is you're going to need a podcast media hosting service. Okay. It's different from your website service. If you have a website on WordPress or Squarespace, it's not going to, like, you cannot upload those files there. You need a separate hosting service specialized in podcasting in order to be able to get your audio there. And you're going to need also the cover art, like what the identity is going to be. I always recommend the cover art, if it's like an individual or a small company, to include the photo of the person. Okay, it should be a high quality photo, not something you took with your smartphone, no, like a professionally made photo, and that will help create that report. Like when people are scrolling through iTunes or Spotify or whatever they're using, they will be able to see, besides the podcast title, like an actual person there. Is different just to connect with a title than connecting with an actual human being.
Yeah, yeah. The art is actually really be, based on my own experience and looking, because I listen to lots of podcasts as well. I really do listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's sometimes the art is what helps a podcast jump out at you, and you go, oh, that's interesting. Let's check that one out and see what it says. So that's pretty critical. Yeah. So one of that whole idea of having a a hosting platform for your podcast. I know there's several different kinds. Do you have one particular one that you use for yours?
Well, I do have one that is my personal favorite. It depends on what is more important to you, what features are more important. I use Podbean. I think the most popular one is Libsyn right now, which is like the probably the oldest one. There is also Podbean. There are other ones as well, Buzzsprout, Simplecast. They're all very good. They all have like their own strengths and weaknesses. And I'm talking about paid services here, okay? Because there are some free ones like Anchor.fm, which belongs to Spotify, by the way. There are good things about the free ones. Well, one of them being free, of course, but you have a lot of limitations in terms of how your show is distributed to the different platforms, such as iTunes and Google Podcasts, etc. So I always recommend going for a paid one because that will give you a lot more control on how your show is distributed. So Libsyn and Podbean could be like go-to recommendations. Very, very stable and very, very user-friendly platforms for podcasting.
Okay, no, that's good. Yeah, because we use Whooshka, um, but it's one of those ones where you've got a choice between free or paid, and it's just interesting looking at the differences between the different hosting web podcast hosting platforms, because that's something you could go really a long way down a rabbit hole trying to figure
Hmm.
out what you want. And when you're first getting started, it's kind of like, well, which one's going to do the job? So what would be the 3 questions somebody should ask in that while they're thinking about choosing a hosting platform for their podcast?
Okay, the first one is gonna be the price to storage capacity ratio. Some of them have a very low price, but also the storage capacity is very low. Some of them have like they are very expensive, but they have a very small capacity ratio in terms of storage. So like you can just upload 1 or 2 episodes per month, or if you want to upload more, so you have to pay more. So you need to find that balance. The other one is well, how popular the service is. You don't want to buy a plan and host a podcast for a year, and then the company you've been using for that just disappears. You want to have a company that has been in the market for, I don't know, like 3, 5 years or even more. Okay, so like the ones I mentioned are companies that have been in the market for a while. And the other one is you need something that is user friendly, like you something that you go and it's super easy to manage and super easy just to update things, to modify things, to update things, because eventually in the process you might make mistakes, or you may want to update things, to modify things, so that should be easy to do. If you find it's very complicated to like update a new audio, or to change a title, or to change a date, so it's not going to be very useful for you in the long term. You need something that is user friendly as possible.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I think so, because you're right about making mistakes. We've had to go back in and change titles, all sorts of things, and when we did that, we discovered that there's some of the places where the podcast gets put out to, like an RSS feed. You have to go in and refresh that feed manually with some of those, and that can be a pain in the neck, especially if you didn't know that problem existed. So yeah, there's lots to think about. No, those are really good. Those are three really good points, I think, to think about when you're trying to decide which hosting platform to choose for your podcast, for your new podcast. So look, it always amazes me how quickly the time goes with these interviews and things like that.
Yeah.
So it just goes by so quick. I'd like to ask you maybe one or two more questions, and I guess the first one would be, is that we've talked about a lot of things today, but what would be one question that a really good question that I should have asked you and I haven't?
uh Probably. Okay, well, a common question is like when to monetize. When can you monetize the show?
Yes, yeah.
That's a big one. That's a biggie. Yeah, and podcasting is a long-term strategy. Okay, because some people want to just start a podcast and start making revenue out of it after 2 weeks or after 2 months, and that's not how podcasting works. Particularly when you are working inside a specific niche. Okay, because like we are not podcasting to entertain people, as many content creators do. We are working we are creating podcasts as part of a business strategy, and business strategies take a long time. So monetizing your podcast will take, at least if you're consistent about it, at least a year. Okay. And by monetizing, I mean that you will be able to generate qualified leads from it. Okay. What you need to focus on for the first year is to create a rapport with the audience and to build a community around the show. Okay. And monetizing will be just a secondary effect of you creating that community around the show.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. So basically, you're saying just get out there, just do it, just do it. You're there adding value to people, and by the time you sort of been doing it for a year, you sort of getting some mastery over the whole thing. You're starting to send leads to either your website or to your services and products, and then at some stage you can choose to further monetize your actual podcast episodes if you want, and that's something that people can think about. I think it's worthwhile thinking about how you're going to monetize from the very beginning, but
Hmm.
you focus all of your efforts on adding value to people, just giving them good value, all the way through, so that they have a good experience, and the monetization comes, as you said. Yeah, I think that's
Afterwards, yes, yes. Eventually, you don't want to go chase leads. You want to attract them. Like you will give them value, and they will come to you. That's how it works. But it takes time. Like you need to build a reputation, and you need to build trust, and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, like months or at least a year.
yeah, no, for sure, absolutely, for sure. So, having just thinking a little bit about our listeners and this, the people who are at that place where they're ready to grow their business, and you've been through, you've already set up one business, and now you're adding to that, or sort of you're moving to suit what your customers are needing from you. What would be a piece of advice for people who are starting out on that business journey, and they're a few steps behind you, and what would be your advice to them as they start to take those steps forward in their business?
Okay, I have personally gone through this situation. Is you have to get on your out of your own way, because like there are some things you have to do that maybe do not resonate with your personality. Because for example, I am a very shy person. I'm an introvert, so for me it's not easy to go out like and show myself in Instagram stories and like do podcast interviews. It's for me it's a challenge, but you need to get out of your comfort zone. If you don't go out there, things are not going to come to you. You need to take the step forward to get out of your comfort zone, do things you hadn't done before, but those are things that are going to represent eventually a return on investment, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of like online presence and recognition as well. And they're also going to help you gain a lot more skills. So just get out of the comfort zone. Like you need to do things you are resistant, you are reluctant to do, but you need to do them, especially when it comes to showing yourself to an audience, like putting yourself out there, like exposing yourself in public. It's hard like in my case in particular, like even I have to do it in English is not my native language, so it's an additional piece of in the challenge. But you have to go out there and do it. In order to be visible, you need to make yourself visible. You need to make your business visible. It needs to be you, because people are not going to connect to a logo. People are not going to connect to the name of a brand. People are going to connect, when you're a small business owner, to a human being that is there on the screen or on the other side of a Zoom call, for example.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, for sure. And that brings me to another curiosity question, because we have quite a few people who go through our program, and we have quite a lot of listeners who they speak more than one language, and that is such a blessing, such a benefit. I think that's such a great thing to be able to do. What would you say to people who do speak two languages, or three or four or five? We have some people in our program that speak 5 or 6 languages, and I just wow. In terms of starting a podcast, what would you recommend to people? The fact that they can speak more than one language, is there an opportunity for them to create value and then do the podcast in one language and then do the exact same podcast in another language and use that as a way of widening out your audience? What would you think about that, or just the whole idea of using that language skill to increase your audience?
Yeah, that's a possibility. It depends on how much or how big the podcasting industry is in your own language. For example, in my native language is Spanish, and in Latin America, podcasting is very, very, very unknown. It's still very unknown. So to use that as a business opportunity, it's still kind of a challenge, but it can be done, and it will not represent much of an additional load on your time or on your efforts, because if it's gonna be in the same business line that you are already working on in English, for example, so it's just transferring those skills, transferring that knowledge, those ideas, that value that you want to share in your own native language.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
will say, yeah, if you think there is a market opportunity for it, even if it's a small one, but you can benefit from it, go ahead and try it.
No, I absolutely. I think that's really really cool. And it's the whole. I think that's the whole. If you can't take anything at all for our listeners out of today's podcast episode, it is just go out there and try it.
Yeah.
Just do it. The whole Nike thing. Just do it.
Yes, you're gonna make mistakes. It's part of the process. Making mistakes is part of the process. It's a learning experience, and it's beautiful, because if you were perfect, it'd be so boring. Like there is nothing to improve. There is nothing else to do. There is nothing to learn. Like why will you have a podcast at all if there is nothing else to learn?
For sure. Absolutely. That would be the ultimate in boring. Yeah, definitely. So, David, it's been fantastic talking to you today. How, if people are interested in learning more about you and the services that you offer, where would they find you?
Okay. You can find the show Audience Coach on every single podcasting platform out there: iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Teacher, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go find Audience Coach and find us there. You can also find us on the website audiencecoach.com. You can reach me to my email, david@audiencecoach.com, and on Instagram, if you're on Instagram, audience.coach.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, thank you again, David. It's been fantastic talking to you.
Thank you very much, Trudy. It was a pleasure.